Yes, thank you for the invitation to join the meeting. It must be boring for you to talk the whole day about GDPR and data protection and things like privacy, so I hope I can wake you up a little bit. I would like to talk about corporate digital responsibility. Why does somebody who's working for government is talking about something that's part of the business sector? The reason why we are picking up the issue is that we see that the regulation on the important issues of privacy, data protection, fair deal, of ethics, of algorithm-based decisions, of ethics of artificial intelligence, I think will be finished in 3 to 5 years. There are many activities of the European Union, many activities, for example, of the German government. We want to develop within the next months a digital strategy. We have set up a committee on data ethics who will provide us with proposals for regulation or for no regulation, also with proposals for market research, for market surveillance, for regulation. So that will be something that will go on within the next years. And that will be set limitations, set boundaries for the market in Europe. And the market in Europe on concerning data is not the same than the market in China or the market in the United States, because our way of life, our way of having democracy, our understanding is quite different. We have values who are part of our constitutions, who have to do with self-determination, with private autonomy, with clear rules, how we include, for example, courts in our decisions. So one thing what we have seen from many talks to companies is that even for many companies it's time to talk and to think about ethics. What are their values? Where are they doing business from? And that's the reason we have started now with 5, 6 companies from different parts, where we have set up a kind of internal working group just in the first step to learn from each other. What are current activities of companies? For example, a telecommunication company who will only sell smartphones, where the company is responsible for the security updates, not the consumer. We are talking with companies who are offering household appliances. That does mean, as a consumer, will I have a chance to buy a product in future that could be connected, but that has not to be connected to work? For example, a fridge, a refrigerator. If I would like to use that kind of service, is fine. But if I only would like to have a fridge that's only a fridge, it must be possible. So for many, many companies, the question, what kind of services do they offer, what kind of products do they offer, is becoming more and more important. From the consumer side, there is a real change within the next time. And the change has to do with the IoT, with connected products. Billions and billions of products will be connected. What does it mean for us, the consumer? It will mean if I buy a bottle, it's a bottle. I know what will be in and what will be out of the bottle. It's a bottle. But in a couple of years, everything that could be connected will be connected. And that means that there are more and more products who are hybrid products, products who are digital products and products who have some real function. And I think as a usual consumer, we can see, okay, it's something to drink, but we don't see and we cannot find out what's going on with the data that connected products will send. And because we can trust and develop trust only to products, the consumer expectation will be, can I trust the company where I'm buying the product or the safety? And that's a shift, that more and more trust and responsibility will be be expected from companies. There are some examples where it has become very expensive not to respect that kind of trust. The best example is Volkswagen. They have manipulated the software to cheat the consumers, to cheat the environmental agencies, and they have to pay, I don't know, maybe at the end 30 billion euros for that kind of unethical decision. And a couple of weeks ago, I had to buy something in a department store for material, and they offered what's the name? Diese Harnstofflösung, die man füllen muss. AdBlue. They offered AdBlue, really in the front of the store, 1 liter for 70 cents. And I thought, what decision has Volkswagen made in avoiding to save some money on AdBlue, and what kind of risk have they done for their business? And when we start to analyze what could be aspects that companies are not only fulfilling current obligations, but what could be the questions consumers will have, and what could be answers companies can develop on a voluntary way to pick up issues, there are some issues that are, in my point of view, becoming more important. One of the issues is the security. It's data security. Data security is obviously very important for all kind of banking activities, for all kind of services that has to do with data or money. But data security is not only important in the relationship to the company to a consumer. It's also important because we have seen that data security is important to save our critical infrastructure. You may ask, what is the connection between a critical infrastructure and the consumer device? And we had a very interesting experience a couple of years ago where a nerd has tried to build up a botnet, including 1 million router of the German Telecom. So involuntarily, private households could have become part of criminal networks and criminal activities. And that means security is not something only for hospitals or power stations. We have to keep in mind that it has to do something, for example, with smart home. If you have more and more connected products in the smart home, who could become part of the network, we have to take care about that. So security is something that's important for society and important for the consumers and private households. Privacy, I mean, you have talked the whole day about privacy. Why is privacy important? I mean, you know the answers. It's not only part of the Constitution, it's part of our way of living. And that means that it's really important to develop strategies for privacy by design, for example, to give people the decision what kind of data should be used or shouldn't be used, to respect that in my home, I should decide whether data should be collected or not by some devices. We had a famous case in Germany. It was a connected toy. The name was Kyla. Kyla was produced by a Chinese company, and it was offered as a toy for very young children. So good, so fine, you would say. What's about a connected toy? And when consumer organizations and when the German regulator start to investigate what is this toy doing, there were some quite interesting results. First, it was a quite unsure connection by Bluetooth. So not only the child or the parents could use that kind of connection, but also people outside of the flat. Second experience, Kyla did collect data and send it to a cloud. Kyla could talk to the young children. Kyla could offer them proposals what the child should eat or buy. Fine, you would like to say, but shouldn't it be a decision of the parents to talk with the children and to ask the children and to have the responsibility for the child? Is it okay that the company nobody knows that is collecting data is offering your child decisions and proposals? So at the end, to make it shorter, the German Bundesnetzagentur, the regulator for net activities, has forbidden the sale of the doll in Germany because it's a case of suspicion. Suspicion means if you have an everyday device that's doing things that are not allowed, it could be dangerous. So security, privacy, and there are many cases that have to do with the respect of privacy are important. And then there is something coming up from the consumer side that will become very interesting. We have now a regulation on data protection. That means many data are not allowed to be used. You have to ask consumers. But part of the future will be a discussion and a deal it will be the discussion on the fair deal and on the fair sharing of data between the customer, consumer, and the company. Because consumers are willing to spend data. If you ask people, it's not only a reality that people want to have privacy. They want to spend data, but they want to be asked. They want to be part of the success story. They want to be part of the benefit. That could be an individual benefit. That could be a benefit for society. I myself would like to spend my medical data not to a German private company, but maybe to a foundation or maybe to organizations whom I can trust. And that means for companies it will become more and more important to be transparent on the way they are using data, offering people things like privacy dashboards where people become active in part of using their data, where they get information what is happening with their data. So it's not only about protection. I mean, protection is important. But the new story is about empowerment. It's about participation of consumers in that kind of deal. So, and that's part of, I would say, another very important activity is about supporting consumer self-determination. It's about education. It's about digital empowerment, because we know it's from time to time necessary to have regulation. But it's more and more important to educate people, to give them the chance to develop their strategies to deal with data sharing, with data protection, and things like that. So that will become a really important issue. Transparency, accountability, that's something that's always important for corporations that are dealing with consumers. Transparency means how could we develop tools that it's easier for consumers to understand what is happening with their data. I mean, I would estimate many of you are using a lot of apps, a lot of services, but whom of you is studying the data declaration, the data protection declaration, or the general terms and trade? Maybe there are a few. I'm sure here are some lawyers who are doing it by job, but most of the consumers just make a click, and they are expecting that either the company is taking care of them, or government organizations. And therefore, activities like the so-called data protection one-pager could be a tool to reduce information, so that consumer can see very quickly what are the important part of that kind of declaration. And I also would say there are many chances for companies. The data protection one-pager was a project where there were involved some companies from Germany. I think IBM was involved in developing it, but also Otto Group or Zalando or German Telekom. Maybe it's not the end of the solutions, but it's still the beginning of a discussion how companies could support consumers. So what I think is that corporate digital responsibility will become more and more important for consumers. For consumers, the essential question is, can I trust the company? Are there indicators where I can find that I could trust the company? If the company open-minded, is it willing to communicate with me as a consumer, and things like that. Our idea now with our activity is to find out with the companies, with some of the companies, what is best practice, what will support companies in offering that kind of corporate digital activities, what are problems that are raising up. One problem is that's quite clear is the current situation of competition. In a competition environment where it's more expensive to do more things, it could be an advantage for a company, so competition issues are important, but also issues related to regulation. You know, German lawmakers are really good in making laws. We try to make good laws and we try to regulate everything on a very detailed basis. I know you don't like it. So one of the part of the work will be also to have a discussion on what kind of regulation do we need? What kind of regulation is appropriate? Is it maybe more important to have a consent on goals, consent on values, and not to have that much on the regulation on many single issues? Can we increase cooperation between business, civil society sector, government in developing guidelines or code of conduct? And that's things we are trying to do. So cooperation, discussing, learning from each other, new concepts for regulation, and trying to support each other in building up a responsible way to deal with digitalization is something that's important for companies, for civil society, and for also for the government. And therefore, I really want to thank you, Bitkom, for offering a possibility for that kind of discussion and exchange, because it's very important that in these questions that will be important for a responsible digitalization, that we exchange information and exchange ideas. Thank you very much.